Hi, I'm Pake Wise. Welcome to the Learn to Hunt series. Today we're going to talk about rifle hunting, specifically deer, how to choose the correct caliber and all that. So I got Wade Farrar with me here today, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Well, Peck, thank you for having me here. I'm glad to do it. Lucky to be here. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Wade Farrar. I'm the Assistant Chief of Law Enforcement here for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. On March 3rd of 2003, I was hired to do the greatest job that any man could ever do, be an Oklahoma game warden. I was assigned to Oklahoma County. I was here about 4 years, 4.5 years. I got to transfer back home to my home county of Logan County. I spent 7 years there as a field game warden. Then I was promoted to lieutenant, where I supervised Lincoln, Payne, Pottawatomie, and Oklahoma counties, 6 game wardens. I was in that position for 3 years, promoted to district chief of District 5 as a captain. Was in that position 2 years. That district runs from Payne and Logan County all the way south to Marietta. Had 2 lieutenants that worked for me, and then 12 game wardens reported to those 2 lieutenants. And then in October of 2019, I was promoted to this position now as assistant chief here at headquarters. So it's a great job. I get to fight for those guys in the field still, but it's not near as much fun as what I used to have. I promise you that.
Yeah, those field jobs are always a lot more fun, but you get to affect things from a bigger point of view, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So when we're choosing our favorite or our the correct caliber, how do we go about that? What are some of the criteria we're looking for?
Well, there's several different criteria you look for when you're looking at a deer caliber. You know, you got to look at the size of the animal you're wanting to hunt. You need to think about the habitat that you're hunting. There's no reason to have a 300 Win Mag if you can only see 50 yards in the woods.
Hmm.
Maybe 30-30 is your best caliber for that. So the terrain and the distance that you can see the animal definitely draws into play. Um, you also have to look at knockdown power. So you have to have something that's big enough to transfer that energy to the animal and hopefully knock it down quickly.
Hmm.
So the larger caliber, the better. But you also have to take into account the size of the hunter, the experience of the hunter, not only as a hunter but as a shooter. Um, and then there's a lot goes into to play with price also. There's a lot of crazy calibers out there that you can spend a lot of money on. Um, but it might be hard to find ammo. The ammo might be expensive, but really the best caliber is one you already possess. But
Yeah.
we can uh, we can talk about each one of those individual if you'd like.
Yeah, let's start with knockdown power because I think that's going to be a good place to start to determine, hey, what how big, how small, where do I need to be on that? So
Right. Well, it's legal to hunt deer in Oklahoma with any center fire rifle as long as it's a 55 grain soft grain bullet or soft nose bullet, excuse me. So I mean, you can hunt one with a 22 to 50, a 223, any of those 22 caliber rifles. But the bigger the better. Not only do you need to worry about knockdown powers, once you shoot that animal, that's really when the hunt starts. If it doesn't fall right there where you shot it and it runs off, you're following tracks and blood. So my boys started off hunting with a 243.
mhm.
It's a great startup rifle. That they don't even notice the recoil when they shoot at an animal. Um, but a lot of times you don't get an exit wound, especially if it buries up in the back shoulder or they don't get the bullet placed right where they wanted to. My oldest is 16 now. He's moved up to a 270, which in my mind is probably the greatest deer caliber that's ever existed.
It's a good one.
But it does kick pretty hard.
Yeah. All right. Well, so with that in mind, I mean, like you said, we need to take into account the experience of the shooter, and you make a good point bringing up the 243. That's a great starter round, especially for kids, because the recoil is something that they can manage, right? You don't want to take a 12-year-old kid that maybe hasn't shot much and give him a 30-06 and he pulls that trigger the first time and he goes, I don't ever want to do that again.
Right.
So, um, but yeah, in my personal experience, another good one's a 6.5 Creedmoor. A lot of people have their opinion on that. But it's a great round. It's got very little recoil. The recoil on it's super manageable. And I know several people that's how their kids started was on a 6.5. And it's a good round, especially if you're going to hunt in the central to western part of the state where you can reach out there a little ways. You could take a kid that's 15, 16 years old and he can reach out there 300 yards if he's shot quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, the 6.5 Creedmoor's a great round. It's developed by for bench shooters is what it was
Mhm.
built for. So it's a longer bullet. distances. It handles wind better. It handles the distance better. Used to ammo is a little bit hard to find, but it's so popular now you can find it basically anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, Pricing I think is pretty close.
Yeah.
To a 243. So I don't personally own one, but it's a good round.
It is a good round. I mean, like I said, I've got some buddies that like to chastise me a little bit, we'll say, for having the 6.5, but
Right.
man, it kills deer just as well as your 308. So, but yeah, um, so that kind of brings us into another thing. It would be hearing protection, right? Um, your larger calibers, typically, there's a lot more powder. That's a much bigger explosion. It's gonna be a lot louder. Um, with today now, you can shoot suppressors. So, can you go into that a little bit?
I sure can. You know, when you're looking at a new hunter, a new shooter, whether they're old or young, there's two things you got to keep in mind with the first trigger pull is probably going to be fine because they don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm,
But if they feel that recoil, and a lot of people don't think about the noise,
mhm.
especially with a young kid, the big loud boom. If they're hearing that without hearing protection on, a lot of times that's going to make them punch that trigger just as bad as recoil will.
Oh, yeah.
So hearing protection is a must. Um, in the blind, it's kind of hard to remember it, especially when it comes to the point, oh, there he is,
Mhm.
get ready. Well, no one really thinks, hey, I should put my hearing protection on, but hopefully you don't have to shoot twice in the blind, right? And then suppressors, other than knocking down the sound, the suppressor also makes the rifle heavier, so it's the recoil is going to be less as well.
Yeah.
So
Yep, shooting suppressors, and I think something else that I think a lot of people will forget, or they will not think about, if you're not shooting subsonic with a suppressor, that gun is still pretty loud. I think there's a lot of people out there, "Oh, you throw a suppressor," they watch movies, you put a suppressor on the end of a rifle, and now it sounds like a laser gun from Star Wars, just
right,
that's it. There's a few guns out there you can do that with, but, I think that's something else that other people need to keep in mind. They're like, "Oh, I'll just get a suppressor for my kid, and he won't need hearing protection." Like, well, he's not gonna damage his hearing, but that gun's still gonna be pretty loud. It's probably not a bad idea for a new shooter. Go ahead and put hearing protection on them while they're
right.
shooting.
Yeah, you're not going to get the boom from the powder
Yeah.
explosion, but you're still going to get the crack when it breaks the speed of sound. So
Oh, yeah.
unless you're shooting subsonic ammo, and if you're shooting subsonic ammo, you better have an expert marksman there with you to tell you how many clicks you need to move that thing because the bullet's going to drop quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, those subsonics, they're the reason they're subsonics because they're below the sound of speed, so that bullet's really slow. Um, I know in my previous line of work, I knew a bunch of guys that shot a 300 blackout, at night shooting, hogs, and that was something they talked about all the time. They're like, "Yeah, it's a great round, but your distance is so short.
Right,
I mean, you can't really go past more than about 100 yards to get and be accurate, because that bullet's so slow." But they're like, "It is quiet." Um, I know we kinda touched on it, but we didn't get real in far into it. It would be distance. I know you're talking about a 300 Win Mag may not be a great round at parts of Eastern Oklahoma where your further shot's 50 yards. So, can you get into more a little about that, and then, like, maybe how you could decide on that?
right. Well, a 300 Win Mag is gonna be big enough gun to kill a deer, whether it's 20 yards or 500 yards.
Yeah.
When I mentioned that earlier, there's really no reason to have that recoil of a 300 Win Mag
Mhm.
when you could shoot it with a 30-30 that has far less
Yeah.
far less kick. But um, when it comes to distance, the first thing you got to think about is what's the experience of the shooter and how practiced up are they? Practice, 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 not just shooting free throws in the gym. When it comes to shooting, you need to practice as well. And you mentioned your buddies poking fun at you sometimes. I've had some ridicule me because my boys are 16 and 13 and they've never shot their deer rifles on a bench at a target. Never. They've shot, I don't know, a dozen deer apiece probably with those rifles, but they've never shot them on the practice bench because I don't want them to flinch and hammer that trigger, especially my oldest ones that shooting that 270 now.
Mhm.
But they've got 22s with scopes on them, and they shoot, 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 shoot. It's basically the same thing. You're still practicing trigger control,
Mhm.
breath control. If you're watching the target, the crosshairs. Um, I've never had them miss one. Um, they've hit every deer they've shot at. I haven't let them stretch out there and shoot long shots yet. Everything's been under 200 yards. But practice is definitely the most crucial part of when it gets to distance shooting for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's just like anything else. Unless you're a savant, no one's going to go out there and be able to pick up a rifle that they've never shot before and go out there and shoot a deer at 400 yards. It's just not going to happen. Your mechanics have to be so sound to make that shot. And you brought up a good point. A 22 is a great starter. Well, personally, in my opinion, it's the most well-rounded gun there is. You can do a lot with it, but um, a 22 would be a great gun, especially for young shooters. Hey, take them out, let them shoot a 22 where the gun's not loud, there is no recoil. And then they can work on those mechanics a lot, and then you can bump them up a little
Right.
bit as they progress.
You know, and another mistake I've seen that folks make when they're getting, well, even with experienced hunters, is they practice on a bench. They practice in a place that's not practical for how they're going to hunt.
Yeah,
So if you're going to have the kids sitting in a ground blind shooting off sticks, get the ground blind out, put it up in the yard or wherever you're going to shoot. Get the sticks out, have them shoot out of the blind, and
yeah,
practice that way. If they're going to be sitting in a chair using something else as a rest, practice that way. Practice those different shooting positions because we all know it makes the gun harder. The more awkward you get in a position, the harder it is to hit what you're aiming at.
yeah, yeah. I've it's real common. I've heard real common. And I've had it happen, not deer hunt, but I've had it happen other places where you're just so used to shooting on that bench where everything is set up perfect, the gun's set up perfect, you can take all the time you want. And then you're out in the field, you're sitting there chowing down on your little Debbie, and then all of a sudden that big old 10 point walks out there, and now your adrenaline's going, you're trying to rush to get your shot lined up, and now everything you've practiced has nothing to do with what you just did other than pulling the trigger. And so you're right, you bring up a great point in that, hey, once you get that gun sighted in, go out and shoot in different shooting positions off shooting sticks, however, or freehand, however you're going to do it, just so that you're aware of that situation. And so when it happens, you know what to do.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's a great point. Just bringing that up. Um, I think another thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration would be how hard or easy is it to find ammo, and how much is that ammo going to cost? There's plenty of calibers out there that are great rounds, but they're really hard to find, and the ammo is really expensive. Um, you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you get out away from the metro areas where you don't have Cabela's and Bass Pro and
Mhm.
academies to stop by. They're you get out to nowhere, Oklahoma, and there's the hardware store. The hardware store probably going to have some ammo. They're going to have 30-30s and 308s and maybe 243s, the most common rounds that have been around for 100 years.
Yep.
They're the new fancy Wildcat cartridges type things. They're maybe not going to have those. So another thing that I've thought about in the past when I've bought rifles is what is my, who do I hunt with the most, and what do they hunt with?
Mhm.
Because I may get somewhere and forget my ammo box, and well, I can shoot some of his ammo, or vice versa. He forgets his ammo, he can shoot mine. So it's just another aspect to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, and especially for new shooters, that's something they may not think about, on the price of ammo. It's real common to walk into a, like you said, Bass Pro, wherever, and you can buy 308, 30-06, 270, 240. You can buy all that ammo fairly cheap. I mean, for really good rounds, you're $40 a box.
Right.
Um, but if you go into some of those obscure rounds, 300 short mag. It would be I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. Right now, the ammo he shoots is $90 a box, and he can't hardly find it. Um, so it's a great round. Maybe not for a new shooter. That gun kicks pretty good, but that's something to take into account. Like, hey, I want this really cool brand new round that Hornady just came out with, and it's like, well, can you find the ammo though?
Right.
Can you afford the ammo? Because
But
when you get it, you're gonna have to go sight it in. So you're gonna have to take that. I'm gonna have to buy 2 or 3 boxes.
yeah, that's the good thing about a 300 short mag. The ammo might be $90 a box, but you're not going to go out and just shoot that thing
Yeah.
repeatedly on the bench.
Yeah.
Not only because of the price of the ammo, it's going to punish you.
Yeah. Yep. I went on an elk hunt a couple years ago and borrowed it, and I was so used to shooting my 6.5. And I took his 300 short mag to the range, and I think I put 6 rounds down range and said, "All right, I can't put another one down because that hurts. That hurts a lot."
I shot a deer with just a regular 300 Win Mag that I'd borrowed one time, and that's the only round I remember ever feeling the recoil when I shot at an animal.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah, recoil, that is still something that's always been the big knock, in my opinion, that I've read on the 6.5 has been, "Well, you only shoot that because it doesn't recoil." I'm like, "So what? If it means I can make more accurate shots, what does it matter?" They're like, "Just go to a 308 and"
the last 6 or 8 deer I've shot have been with a 22 to 50 in the neck,
Yeah,
and I do that because there's absolutely no recoil.
yeah.
So
Well, it's and again, that's another good round. It's a flat shooting round. If you can make a good shot, there's n I have no qualms with anybody shooting whatever they can shoot. I am not a I'm not one of those guys. You will run into those guys in the gun world where they're like, "Oh, you need to shoot big rounds." I was like, "Well, if you're a good shot, you can kinda get away with whatever you want."
right. I'm out there gathering tenderloins and backstraps anymore. The bucks can my boys can shoot them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you made a good point earlier, and we just kinda touched on it too, but, if you already have it, right? There's no real point in going out and spending unless you just want to, but not gonna knock you that for that. But if you already own a rifle and you're fairly comfortable shooting it, just go shoot it. There's no point going out and spending another $2 or $3,000 on a gun, scope, and ammo if you already have it.
Right. Yeah, I tell people that all the time. I said the best rifle you own is the one you are, or the best rifle you can have is the one you already own.
Yeah.
If you've got another $1,000 you want to go spend, you already have a high quality bolt gun that's capable of shooting a deer. Go spend that $1,000 on an optic.
Hmm.
Um, you can't put an optic too good on a rifle.
Oh yeah.
Um, you definitely need to, in my opinion, need to spend as much money as you spend on the rifle on the optic because a lot of your misses don't necessarily come from shooter error. It's a low quality optic.
Hmm.
So
Yep. I had a conversation with a guy one time that shot competition long range, and he was talking about that. He said a lot of guys want to go spend $4,000 and $5,000 on a rifle, and then they put a $800 scope on it. Which for hunting that's fine, but for those long range guys, they need as accurate as they can get.
right,
And he said I do the opposite. He said I go buy a Remington 700 in whatever caliber he was shooting, and he said, and then I put a $3,000 scope on it. And he said, and I shoot just as well as they do.
right,
And he said, and I've got half the money invested. But that's well, actually, that kind of brings up a good point. Is optics? It's kind of hard to talk about rifle hunt without talking about optics. So,
right.
um, what's a great like? Where do they start on optics? Because that's a world in and of itself.
Um, I don't know. The biggest thing with an optic is you do need to train the shooter, or the shooter needs to practice dialing, adjusting the scope
Mhm.
themselves as far as um, power goes. My boys have a habit of turning that thing all the way up to 9 power, 12 power, whatever the thing is, and then leaving it there. And then there's a deer at 50 yards and they have trouble finding it.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm there with them, I can adjust it for them when they get it up there, but that day's going to go away sometime. So
Mhm.
they need to practice adjusting that. They need to practice shooting the target. If it's a 100-yard target you're shooting, don't just shoot the thing on 9 power, back that thing back out so they know what it feels like to shoot at those different
Yeah.
through the different variables of the magnification, I guess.
Yeah. Um, and like I said, you start getting into the world of optics, and you're going to get into it's just as varied as guns and calibers and all that. Um, and for hunting purposes, I mean, with optics, you get what you pay for.
No doubt.
If you want to go out and buy a $50 scope, uh, go ahead if you want, I guess. But it's not going to be a great scope. You start getting into those later evening or early morning time periods when deer are most active. The odds of you being able to see much through that are not great. I'm not saying you have to go out and spend $5,000 either, but there's a lot of really good quality scopes out there for in that $200 to $500 range that would be real good for a new shooter.
For sure.
There's plenty of brands out there that pretty much all of your standard brands out there are going to have scopes in those range. Um, and then when you start getting into, well, what about zoom and all that? That's entirely up to you. Um, that's always what I've always told people is whatever you like. 3 to 9, a 3 by 9 is a great place to start. Like, you can back that down to 3. It's easy to pick stuff up at 30, 40, 50 yards. And if that deer's out there 150, 200 yards, you've got enough magnification that you can still get out there and touch him.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about shot placement. I think that's we've kind of covered everything else. We get into the actual meat of it. Shot placement.
Um, with a new hunter, sometimes even with old hunters, it's important to talk about placement. Where are they going to put those crosshairs when they squeeze the trigger?
Hmm.
So what I've done with kids that I've mentored and my boys is I show them pictures of deer.
Hmm.
You Google up whitetail deer and start scrolling through them, and just show them different angles of the deer.
Yep.
Quartered towards them, quartered away from them, standing completely broadside, um, so that they can make that decision on their own, and you're not standing in their ear saying, "Okay, pull the trigger, pull the trigger, pull the trigger."
Hmm.
They're like, whenever you're ready and the deer's right, make it happen. So even as much as to, the side that's towards you, especially with a smaller caliber like a 243, you want the front leg to be forward, because
Hmm.
that's just that much less likely you're going to hit that front shoulder. If they're away from them, that 243 is probably going to bury up in that back shoulder, and you're not going to get an exit wound. So you want them to be completely broadside, is what I've told my boys with that 243. Once he starts shooting that 270, it doesn't matter if they're quartered away, quartered towards. If he wants to shoot them through the front shoulder, he can.
Yep.
But it's real important to talk about shot placement, and I've even had them. You put your finger or this pencil, right where the bullet needs to go,
Yep.
and I think that helps a lot. Just that it's simple, and it seems like, "Hey, why would I need to do that?" But it's important.
Yeah. There's plenty of like you said, stuff on Google. You can Google different positions that a deer might be in, and you will find a picture and then add with a grid on it. And you'll find a deer that's broadside and it's got a grid on there, and you can say, "Hey, where in this grid would you shoot this deer?" I've seen them quartered away, quartered to, however you want to do it. Um, and with that, you were talking about with that 243 on that quartered away shot, that may not be an ideal shot for that gun. I think what a lot of people, especially new shooters, will forget is they'll get used to looking at a picture of a deer, and then in their mind now that deer is a 2D object, right? So that deer may be quartered away, and they're still sticking it back behind the shoulder, and it's like, well, you're aimed a little far back, you're gonna miss some stuff. With shot placement, it's real important to remember that's a 3D object. It's a three-dimensional animal, and as it moves, its internal organs are moving. And so that's always something I always like to do is find and there's plenty of stuff on Google, but you can find cutaway images that show the organs, and then you say, okay, as this rotates, where's that heart at now? Where's the lungs at now? Um, and that'll change where you place that shot depending on how that deer is standing. But but yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything we need to cover. I mean, we've hit optics, recoil management, sound, hearing protection. I think we've kind of touched it all. Um, let's wrap it up, and we'll close with a hunting story.
Okay, can I tell two?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. One that comes to mind with a new hunter, when my youngest boy shot his first buck, we had a little 2-year-old 8 point on camera that had like a club foot. He stepped on something when he was young or something. Had a big old giant enlarged hoof on one side, and he said before season, "That's the one I want to shoot." I said, "Well, buddy, it's your first deer. You can shoot whatever walks in. Whatever. If you're proud of it, I'm going to be proud of it."
Hmm.
So, opening day of rifle season, I'm sitting in the blind with him, and at that time, both my boys were sitting in there with me, and he comes out about at 8 o'clock. The sun's up good. It's plenty bright. He comes in there with a couple other little bucks, and he looks at him and he's like, "I don't know, Dad. I don't think I'm going to shoot him." Well, that's fine. We got a whole 16 days to shoot a deer. You don't want to shoot one this year. That's fine too. Well, he says if he comes back this afternoon, God puts him here for me to shoot him if he's back this afternoon. So
Hmm.
we go out that afternoon, and the buck walks out 10 minutes after we sit down. He's like, "There he is. I'm going to take him, Dad." And so he shoots him. He mule kicks. It's like a 40-yard shot. He runs off in the woods. And I'm like, "Well, he's going to die." He's like, "Let's go find him now." I'm like, "Well, no, we're going to wait." I said, "It's really early." I'm like, "Your brother's sitting here with us. We're going to sit here till dark, and maybe your brother will shoot one." So he sits there, shaky and excited, and he's ready to go. And dark comes, and we go out there, and we find no hair where he shot it. So we probably don't have an exit wound. We don't find any blood on the ground at all where he shot the deer. We go, we find very little blood. We're finding we don't have an exit wound for sure. We're finding very little, few drops of blood. Well, I'm colorblind on top of that, so me finding
Oh,
blood in the leaves is tough. My boys are good at it, but they're struggling with it too. And we'd got where we were following just tracks, and so I said, "Buddy, let's come back in the morning and look." And just breaks down and sobbing. I mean, uncontrollable, ugly crying right there
yeah.
in the woods. And I was like, it'll be fine. He's dead. I promise you. We'll come back out here in the morning and find him. And we walk off, and he's mad and sad. So him and his brother are walking right back down the trail, and I was like, I'm gonna walk around this tree and just maybe he's laying there. I walk around this big cedar tree, and there he is laying in the Johnson grass, about 5 foot tall. And I said, "Hey, why don't you guys walk over here?" And he runs over there and sees him, and Toyota jumping in the air and pumping his fists, and he was so excited. But um, it's a fun story because of the emotional roller coaster I guess he went on right there
Oh,
for his
yeah.
first deer.
Got to experience it all.
Another first deer story I'll tell you. This has been about probably 20 years ago. It was out by Luther. I'm cruising around during gun season, 10 mile an hour down the road, and I see two orange heads bobbing through the woods. And I'm looking where they're going. They're headed up towards this pickup truck. I'll meet them up there and talk to them, do a compliance check, see how their hunt went. And I get up there, and one of them, they're both excited, but one of them's just, they're probably 25 to 30 years old. One of them's super stoked. He just shot his first deer. I'm like, all right. And I'm like, well, where's it at? He's like, well, we haven't looked for it. We're coming up here to put the gun in the truck. And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go down there and help you guys find it. So we go down there, and they've got a pop-up blind set up. And he's like, well, we're right here in the pop-up blind. I said, okay, well, where was the deer when you shot it? And he goes, it was over here. And he covers about 300 yards in this wheat field. So what do you mean it's over here? He's like, well, it was over there in this wheat field. Where? He had no earthly idea where it was at. So I say that to say, especially with the new hunter, they need to know that's important because the hunt
Yeah.
really starts after you pull the trigger. You need to mark where the deer was standing in the last place that you saw the deer, and in sometimes the last point you heard the deer.
Mhm.
So we started walking out in the wheat field. Luckily, he'd smoked this deer. It looked like somebody's dumped red paint out in the field. So we've got a good blood trail. He jumps on it. She didn't go 75 yards down in this creek. He finds her. He gets super stoked. And I'd noticed through my contact with this guy, because this is what cops do, he had a knife on his belt that was the size of a crocodile Dundee. It looked like a
Oh.
miniature sword on his belt. And he whips this thing out. I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to gut this deer. I said, have you ever done this before? And he said, well, no, but I've seen it done. I said, okay, well, I have a knife right here in my pocket that's probably a little bit more suited for gutting the deer. You could use it if you'd like. No, I'm going to use this one. And so he rolls her over on his back. His buddy holds it. And he finds the brisket. And I'm like, well, maybe he does know what he's doing. And he takes that knife and just inserts it all the way to the hilt,
Oh.
all the way, and makes the sound that all of us have probably heard that have hunted before. And I went ahead and took that time to exit stage left and go back to my truck. So humility is a big deal when it comes to being a hunter. You can always learn something from somebody else. I mean, I would have gutted the thing for them if they would have asked me to.
Yeah.
Um, I would definitely guided them through it and made sure that they didn't make that mistake. So if you don't know, ask.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that's a mistake you gotta learn.
Right.
Because you make that mistake once, and then you don't ever do it again.
Yeah, your guts will thank you for sure.
Yep, yep. All right, well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming down and talking to us, man. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking time to come out here.
Anytime, it's just a short elevator ride to get here. So.
Heck yeah. So, all right, I think that'll do it. Thanks for coming out and watching the Learn to Hunt series. Appreciate it.